Welcome back to Common Ground, an inside look at Suffolk County. I'm your host, Sheriff Steve Tompkins. Now, on this side of the show, we've got House Speaker Bob DeLeo, and what a guy. I mean, he's been up at the State House advocating for all the citizens, actually, throughout the Commonwealth, but prior to that, he was the rep for Winthrop, which is a Tony, very nice community that actually I hadn't known about in Suffolk County, tucked in Suffolk County, until Sheriff Cabral, former Sheriff Cabral, ran for office the first time, and we had an opportunity to go out to Winthrop. And if you've ever been there, you know how great it is. And if you haven't been there, then you should drop by, and they've got some of the best beaches. But enough of that. Sir, thank you so very much for coming on.
Thank you. I also have a little portion of Revere as well.
Oh, you do? Oh, okay. Yeah, that's right. I saw you in Revere last week.
The other
down there with
along
Ira.
the beach.
That's right. Yeah, with Ira Novoleski.
But you're right, though. Beautiful beaches, that we have.
Your beaches are great.
We are sort of a hidden.
It's a hidden jewel.
Place.
You know, what is it? It's about 2 miles
No, actually about 1.5 miles, mile and a quarter, so it's even smaller than that.
But there's a lot that goes on there, though, you know.
You got a couple of good restaurants, too,
which
we'll have to get you on.
Oh,
you've already...
I haven't, but I've heard about them. Okay. You know, I want to come out. I'm going to have the opportunity to spend more time out there. But talk to us about... what goes on in the House. A lot of people know, but a lot of people don't know. In your capacity as House Speaker, first tell me about what the House is set up to do, and then what your job functionality is in guiding the representatives.
Sure. The House consists of 160 members. Each of our districts are, approximately about 40,000 people. Okay. And what's fascinating, Steve, is I just got a little bit of it here today. When you look at the different districts here in Massachusetts, you get to see how different we are. I had the opportunity to see a rep who had some bunch of kids from Brockton, peer mentors, beautiful, beautiful kids. And then I walked up the hall and I had to speak to a group from the Berkshires, some women from the Berkshires. Who they're on an educational tour.
Right.
So, we as a Commonwealth, it's just fascinating to see all the differences.
The diversity is beautiful, too.
It is. It's wonderful. So each represent about 40,000 voters. Each 2 years we get elected. And then every 2 years, the first day of the session, it is at that point that the members select a Speaker of the House. Okay. That person who's going to lead the House for the following 2 years.
Okay.
Now, in terms of the issues, I mean, everything goes through committees, but basically it's the Speaker's responsibilities to do anything from setting the agenda for the House to deciding on offices and seats and committees that members may be serving on.
So you appoint the members to the different committees? I
appoint all the members to the committees.
Now, do they petition you to say, sir, I'd like to be on such and such committee?
They do.
Yeah.
They do.
That must be fun.
That is fun. It's just, it's interesting because, as you could probably appreciate, I think everybody wants to be a chair, even if they've only been there for a couple of years, and that's okay.
Right.
That shows that they're, that they want to move ahead and whatnot.
Right.
And you try to, fit people into what I think is the best role that they can play.
Now, as the House Speaker, do you also serve on committees, or are you just overseeing everything?
No, I do not serve on.
Okay, probably no time left to do
committees. Yeah, my time is pretty well taken up with so many other duties. And being a Speaker, it's interesting to note, although I do represent, Winthrop in a portion of Revere, which I have for 22 years now, but the job of Speaker does take you, throughout the Commonwealth, or, as well. You are almost considered, in certain cases, like as a state figure, because of, you're speaking on behalf of the entire House on various issues, so that makes you obviously looked upon statewide.
How long have you served in the legislative body?
22 years.
Wow.
Okay. And 5 years as Speaker.
Now, did you always want to do this type of work, or did you come from a very civically active family, or is it just something that you woke up one day and said, I want to serve?
Well, that's a great point. Elected office was politics in general, something which always interested me.
Right.
My mom and dad would often tell the stories about my two major loves in life was sports, especially baseball, and politics. I would sometimes watch the conventions, even the Republican
As a child?
conventions, but as a child.
Even the Republicans. Give a shout out to the Republicans.
And mimic, you know, some of the speakers. So I always, I always liked it. That and back in, I can remember sort of my first major campaign that I was involved with was in 1976. When I was called and they said, "You interested in helping a gentleman by the name of Jimmy Carter? He's running for president." And I think I said, you know, I'd really rather be involved with someone who, you know, was going to win.
Right.
And
Little did you
so
know.
from there, it took off. Ran for town meeting member in Winthrop, which we don't have anymore,
Okay.
but we used to have a town meeting member. Then selectman, and then a state representative.
So what issues are, I know you don't sit on committees, but are there some issues that are really near and dear to your heart that you really champion, say either education, healthcare, public safety?
Yes, I'd probably say some of the major issues that I've been involved with, obviously, is local aid, education, funding, making sure that we have enough finances for the disabled, mental and physical. Yeah. I'll tell you another issue that I've really gotten involved with, especially lately, has been around the issue of drug abuse. Yeah. And I think you probably could share some stories with me, actually, Mr. Sheriff. But what I have seen in our beautiful communities that we have, we're no different than any other place in the city or any of the richer communities that you go further north. This is a statewide problem in terms of what we are seeing. The deaths that we are seeing. That's right. So that's been
particularly
another
among
issue.
Our young kids.
Right.
You know.
And probably and the other biggest issue that you probably have heard about is I've really been involved in the community college movement. I look at community colleges as sort of the great equalizer.
Yes.
That you got a kid, or I shouldn't say a kid, because some of these are
that's right.
in the high 20s, maybe early 30s, and some even older.
Right. That's right.
But who, you know, maybe four-year college isn't what they're set out to do. Right. But with the economy, with the new jobs of tomorrow, you know, you try to get them into a two-year school so you can prepare them better for those jobs. And that's been one of the major things that I've been working on. You take some of the, you know, again, maybe the kids from the you know, from the city, and you give them the opportunity. Right. And some of them will go on further to 4 years.
Well, I want to talk to you a bit about that. I'm a trustee at Roxbury Community College. Oh. And I'm actually the commencement speaker for their graduation that's coming up pretty soon, which I'm really psyched about.
I saw Kathy Taylor the other night.
Right. Our board chair, a fine lady. Here's the thing about community colleges, and I agree with you. A lot of kids coming right out of high school, you know, I remember when I graduated from high school, I didn't go straight to college. I went to work for a couple of years because I'd been in school all my life. You know, I wanted to make some money. But I think that community colleges serve as a nice bridge either into a four-year school or into a trade. You know, which I think is really, and I'm old enough to remember vocational high schools. I grew up in New York City, but we had vocational high schools, which I would actually like to see come back a little bit. And there's, I understand, a move now to kind of join Madison Park High School with Roxbury Community College and look at this situation around the continuation of education, but also with some emphasis on trades or vocations, vocational ed, so that folks that didn't necessarily want to go into math or science and the STEM thing I'd like to talk to you about also, because I know you're big on that. The last time I had a carpenter at my house or a plumber at my house, I paid a good wage for that, you know? And everybody may not be built for that academic track. Do you believe that community colleges can fill that gap for folks to go wherever they want to go?
Exactly, exactly, and that's why, and I feel so strongly about it. I was in, you know, and I took a look at the community college down Miami-Dade, 178,000 students that they have down there.
And they're doing community college?
It's a community college.
Wow.
And they're just doing some wonderful things in terms of putting these kids into jobs. Let me tell you the way I look at it.
Please.
I was very fortunate in high school. I was an East Boston kid, and I went to Boston Latin School, which I consider to be the finest school in the country. All right?
There you go. In the country.
For those people who may be watching, I'm very, very proud.
Right.
But when we went to, you know, when you went to Boston Latin School, you had you know, kids from all over the city.
That's true.
You had African Americans, you had Italians, you had Irish, you had Jewish, you had Chinese. And it was funny when I got to our well, my reunion a couple of years ago. And in my table, I had an African American, I had an Armenian, I had a Jewish kid, I had an Irish kid, and me. And we all grew up in pretty much three deckers, so to speak.
Right.
And we went on to do pretty well in life. And I say that because I look at that as the opportunity that I had because I had a good education. And that's what I'm concerned about these kids. And I think as I talk to kids, no matter what their status in life is, no matter how much money they may have, if they can at least apply themselves for their 2 years, and we can do our best to get those kids into 2-year institutions,
that's right.
Then we're going to be better off as society.
Yeah.
And with all due respect, Mr. Sheriff, maybe you won't have so many folks in your institution.
Oh, no, sir. You know what? Hey, listen, I'm right there with you. Look, if you look at it this way, it costs $46,000 to incarcerate.
Right.
Probably a third to a half of that to educate K through 12. And so one of the things when I'm out talking to kids and others is about the need to stay in school. Get an education, because that's the portal to opportunities, whether the opportunities just come your way or if you create those opportunities. But when you either dwell in truancy, or just drop out of school altogether, you're doing yourself an outrageous disservice, And so the thing that I also like about community colleges is the cost factor. It's not as much, it's affordable.
And that's the other issue, you're right.
The cost.
And that really prepares them well for the 4 years. If they can get the schools, one of the things I like to see, and I think we're doing it to a certain degree, is I'd rather see, hopefully we can get some more agreements between the 2-year institutions, the state schools, and even some of the private schools into Boston as well. But the problem we've had, some of the kids, by the time when they get into community college, they may not be prepared. They have problems, especially you mentioned in the STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math, where by 2018 we're going to need over 300,000 jobs that are going to be available in those fields. So what I was talking about, the so-called STEM Academy, was to see if we can give those kids sort of an extra boost, extra assistance, help, if you will. Because some of these kids are going to the schools.
That's right.
It's taking them a year, maybe 2 years.
Taking remedial courses.
Remedial courses.
That's right.
And by that time, they're either broke or they don't want anything to do with school anymore.
Right, exactly.
So if we can hasten that, maybe, 3 months, 6 months or whatever, and we can keep those, I should keep on saying kids, those folks in the school, then, maybe we can move them along as opposed to some of the poor rates of graduation that we see.
Well, let me ask you then, what's your thoughts on charter schools? Because the narrative is that the day is a little bit longer, the instruction's a little bit more intense, and that kids score a little bit better. Now, I went to public school in New York, and I understand that we have some great public schools here in the Commonwealth, but where do you come down on, public versus charter?
I'm pretty much supportive of both, actually. I see the role of both. I can tell you, especially in the city, when I talk to the state representatives in the city, there's a large movement afoot, in terms of increasing charters, and I've also seen some of the statistics and some of the successes of the charter schools. On the other hand, being formerly from the city, I think obviously our public school system also has a major role to play as well. So I don't think it's an either-or situation. So I think that they can operate cooperatively.
Now I want to go back to something that you mentioned a moment ago, particularly among our young kids, is the substance abuse, and what's happening to these kids. And so many of these kids either getting caught in the usage of that and then winding up in the system, or ultimately, hurting themselves in a pretty bad way, sometimes fatally. How is the discussion up on the Hill around what we need to do around substance abuse and how we address that issue?